Good morning and welcome to our community affairs program that we call 30 Minutes. Today we bring you a portion of a guest appearance by Tennessee 8th District U.S. Congressman David Kustoff. Congressman Kustoff spoke to a crowd at the Obion County Farm Bureau office on Friday morning. We hope you enjoy today's program.
I'm Ty McConnell, President of the Obion County Farm Bureau Board. On behalf of the Obion County Farm Bureau, the Obion County Chamber of Commerce, welcome. Since President Trump's election in November, things have been moving at a rapid pace, and we're all eager here for an update from Washington, D.C. It's my honor to introduce Congressman David Kustoff, a strong advocate for West Tennessee and our agriculture community. A Memphis native, he earned his law degree from the University of Memphis before being appointed U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee by President Bush in 2006. Immediately, he made fighting for government corruption, violent crime, and drugs a priority. He oversaw the Tennessee Waltz trials, which led to the conviction of 12 defendants, including Senator John Ford. Since his election to Congress in 2016, he has worked tirelessly on issues that matter to us. Agriculture, serving on the House Committee on Ways and Means, which oversees taxes, health care, trade, and family support programs. He and his wife, Roberta, live in Germantown and have 2 children. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Kustoff.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. Thank you all. Thank you to the Farm Bureau and to the Chamber. Thanks for inviting me this morning, and I like to come out annually every year when I'm invited. I thought if it's okay, I'm going to talk about 2 issues, and then I'm happy to address questions about anything that I've talked about or anything else that's on your mind. The first issue I want to talk about, and it's near and dear to my heart, is tax. And I say that because I am on the House Ways and Means Committee, which of course is the oldest committee in Congress, the only committee mentioned in our Constitution. And this year is really kind of the Super Bowl of tax. We get these opportunities once every X number of years to look at the tax code and see what we can do to, in my opinion, to improve, to modify to what the country needs and what the economy needs. A little bit of background. So in 2017, Congress passed something called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And what we did was we looked at the tax code and we wanted to revive the economy for everybody. We wanted to lower taxes for everybody. And so what we did was we looked at the code. We reduced the tax rates. We condensed the brackets. We doubled the standard deduction so that most people don't have to itemize. In fact, Art, in our district in West Tennessee, it's like 88 to 90% of the taxpayers now take the standard deduction and don't have to itemize, and that's a big deal. For corporations, the big corporations, the C Corps, we took the tax rate, which was 35%, we lowered it to 21%. And we did that because companies were saying, in the U.S., we're not competitive with the rest of the world. China has a lower tax rate. Ireland has a 15% tax rate. So we lowered that. We looked at small business, the pass-throughs, and we gave a 20% deduction, something known as Section 199A. I fundamentally do not think that we should have an inheritance tax and a state tax. At the state level, we got rid of it. At the federal level, we took a look. I look at our family farms in West Tennessee, our small businesses. Too many were impacted prior to 2017 with the state taxes. And if you've got to pay estate taxes, if you've been faced with that, or you know anybody that's been faced with that, it could literally mean the difference between being able to keep your farm and having to sell your farm to pay the taxes. So we looked at the estate tax exemption and we doubled it. And because of the fact that we doubled it, that significantly reduced the number of estates, those with heirs with family farms and small businesses, that would have to liquidate to get the cash to pay the taxes. So I bring all that up, and we did a lot more. I bring all that up because if we don't do anything before the end of this year, almost all of that goes away. Not everything, but almost all of it goes away. The impact to people in West Tennessee, the average family of four, would be anywhere from roughly $1,200 per family to $3,000 per family. That would be an impact to everybody. The small business would lose that 20% deduction. And I talked to so many small businesses about what they've been able to do with the money that they have not had to pay over to the federal government, that they can use for their employees, to pay their employees more money, to give them better benefits, to be able to reinvest in their business. So you may have heard President Trump talk about one big beautiful bill. When he's done that, he is in part talking about these tax issues that I'm talking to you about. I envision one bill that not only addresses tax, which the Ways and Means Committee is working on right now, not only tax, but also border security and immigration and energy. If we can pass the one big bill out of the House of Representatives, it would go to the Senate, and we would use a process called reconciliation, which essentially means instead of having to get past the 60-vote threshold in the Senate, it could pass with 51 votes if, in fact, it can pass. So our goal right now is to try to get that passed in the House of Representatives by the summertime, by this summer. And so we're working hard. I've been working for a number of weeks on the committee on these tax provisions, and we continue to work on it when I go back on Monday. The other issue that I wanted to talk to you about briefly is the Farm Bill. And we've talked about this as a way of background. The last new Farm Bill, if you will, that we passed was in 2018. The Farm Bill is a 5-year bill. It expired in 2023. In 2023, we were in divided government with Republicans controlling the House of Representatives, Democrats controlling the Senate, Democrats in the White House. In 23, we extended the Farm Bill for 1 year. Last year in 2024, in the House of Representatives, out of the House Agriculture Committee, they did pass a Farm Bill. Usually these are bipartisan. It was bipartisan in that the vote was 33 to 21, with all the Republicans voting for it and some of the Democrats. But the House and the Senate, unfortunately, never came together on that Farm Bill. I think in the House we did our part, but the Senate did not. It didn't marry up, and then here we are in a new Congress. I've talked to Chairman G.T. Thompson. His goal really is to get that bill, that Farm Bill, passed, which would give so much relief to our farmers by the summertime. I represent, in the 8th Congressional District of Tennessee, the largest ag district in the state. And I've told you this, those of you in the Farm Bureau, you all have done a lot to educate me and inform me from the time that I got elected. And I'd like to think I've been a pretty strong advocate. But legislating is tough. And so at the end of last year in December, is kind of a patch, if you will, we passed roughly $31 billion in funding for farmers, $10 billion, pardon me, for relief for the farmers, $20 billion in those in the disaster areas, hurricanes, flooding, and whatnot. Certainly East Tennessee, North Carolina, and as I understand, I think within the last week, we've had some of that $10 billion start to be dispersed, which is a good thing. One last thing on ag, maybe two last things. In my opinion, we want our food grown and produced in the United States. I think it's a national security issue. And when I explain it to others, we don't want to import our food from China and from other places. We view it as a national security issue, having our food grown and produced in the United States. So we'll continue to do that. On a really good positive note, and I'm proud of him, many of you know Stephen Vaden, who of course is a Obion County native, has a farm in Obion County. Stephen, background, was a lawyer, and then in 2017 became the chief of staff for Secretary Sonny Perdue in the first Trump administration for the Department of Agriculture. At the end of the Trump administration, he was nominated by President Trump for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench and was confirmed. Stephen is willing to give up this lifetime appointment to be the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture. And so I hope that soon he'll have this confirmation hearing. To me, personally, for him, that's a big sacrifice to give up a lifetime job and be on the federal bench, and obviously that's very prestigious as a lawyer. His heart is in agriculture. And I do want to tell you that in those first 4 years of the Trump administration, Stephen was a great resource to me and to my office, that we could go to somebody directly at the Department of Agriculture and could get issues addressed. So I'm really happy and excited and proud of him that he's willing to do that, and look forward to working with him. And so with that, I want to say to you all, thank you. And at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions about anything that I've talked about or any other issues.
Representative Kustoff, thank you for being a friend of the Farm Bureau and the ag community, and the work that this work you've had with all of Farm Bureau and the Farm Bureau. But the sundown on the inheritance tax is absolutely devastating to farm families. You mentioned it briefly. Is there anything else that you can say about what they're looking at?
Yeah.
Or the possibilities, what's going to happen if nothing is done?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So the question is about the sunsetting of the increase, if you will, the exemption of the inheritance tax. So if I can, I'm going to over-answer you a little bit, because I want you all to have the perspective that I've got. I meant what I said, that I wish we didn't have to deal with it at all, because of the fact that certainly with our farming community, you can have, as you know, you've got the assets, the land, the equipment valued at whatever, you make up the number, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the cash is there. In fact, most of the times there's not adequate cash. So we've been looking at it from a number of different perspectives. I told you we voted on this in 2017, and it essentially had an 8-year time span, which means it takes it to the end of 2025. We've been looking at it from different perspectives, not only the inheritance tax issue, but the rates, the brackets, everything that we talked about. Can we extend it out 5 years? Can we extend it out 8 years? Can we extend it out 10 years? Can we make it permanent? Now, President Trump wants it permanent. Senator Majority Leader John Thune not only is passionate about making it permanent, but about eliminating it completely, having no inheritance tax, no estate tax. So everything starts in the House. Everything starts with the Ways and Means Committee, and it's generated there. When we're looking at not only that provision, but everything else, there's a cost to it. And we get scores, if you will, from a group called the Joint Committee for Taxation, Joint Committee on Taxation, JCT. And we rely on that, whatever they say it costs. So if something costs, and this is where I'm over answering you, but I want you to understand, how do you pay for it? What are the pay-fors? And we're looking at a number of different things, and it's like a 75,000-piece puzzle. You throw all the pieces on the table, and then you try to connect them. If you can't connect every single one of them, it doesn't work. So I'll give you one example. When we did this in 2017, one way that we paid for some of these tax cuts, we put a $10,000 cap on something called SALT. Acronym is SALT, state and local taxes. The bottom line is if you live in Tennessee, it probably doesn't affect you that much. If you live in a high tax state like New York or New Jersey or California, it probably does. And so when we did that, though, it wasn't meant to be punitive towards those states. It was meant to pay for about $900 billion over 10 years, which is a significant amount of money. So you've got some congressmen from some of these states that say, you know, I don't know if I want to vote for the tax bill unless you get rid of the SALT cap at $10,000, or unless you take the $10,000 and you raise it from $10,000 to, you make up the number. Well, if you do that, then that $900 billion is going to be decreased to something. And then how do you pay for things? Full disclosure, I voted against something called the Inflation Reduction Act that was proposed by President Biden. I disliked it. In fact, I think it's inaptly named because I think it exasperated the inflation that we were experiencing. But there were a number of energy provisions that were in the Inflation Reduction Act. If you got rid of all of them, that's going to pay for blank. But, you know, I've had a number of people come to me and they say, you know, Congressman, since this was passed, I've made business decisions. I've made investments. And so I'm just candidly, I'm thinking about it a different way. Maybe not get rid of everything. Maybe you keep some. Maybe you keep some, but you modify it where, you know, if you do business with the Chinese, you don't get the full credit. So you play with a lot of these things. But I will say, fundamentally, to a number of people, they dislike the inheritance tax at any level. There are some that would say, I'd be happy if you just keep it where it is so it doesn't go back to where it was 7 and 8 years ago. And so I'm not dodging. I'm just telling you, we're working with a lot of different numbers. What do things cost? How do you pay for it? And then again, one big issue, aside from all the substantive issues, are, do you make it a certain number of years, 5, 8, 10, or do you make it permanent? And so we're having these debates right now. Going back to what you asked me, on that threshold issue, on the exemption, I feel pretty passionate about it. I'd like to get rid of it, but if by way of compromise, if that means we keep it where it is and you index it for inflation like we've been doing, then that's something I consider. But you got to see how all these pieces fit together.
It's hard to plan long term when it's going every 4 years or every 8 years. It's changing. It's hard for people to make estate planning when it's being changed.
Well, so you're right. Not only is it hard to make those decisions. I said to you earlier that I think that this should be passed by the summertime, and you just hit on one reason why, and that's because of the uncertainty. People don't know how to plan and make decisions, how to affect their pocketbook, and the same goes for small and medium-sized businesses. They don't know whether they will have the ability to invest or whether they're going to be they'll be affected with not having as much cash. You know, in Shelby County, FedEx they are the largest private employer in the state, and significant investment everywhere. By the way, Fred Smith, who is no longer CEO but chairman of the board, created the company over 50 years ago, and he's still helping to lead the company, which is pretty amazing. When we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, FedEx said, because of the savings that we're getting on taxes, we're putting $1 billion into the Memphis hub. That's big. We had companies that said, we're raising our minimum wage because of the savings that we're getting from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that benefited employees. And so, you know, as I talk to companies, large, medium, and small, I like to hear the anecdotal stories. How did this law benefit you, and what happens if it goes away? But I agree with you.
Congressman Kustoff, what's your personal opinions about the work of Elon Musk in reducing fraud, waste, and abuse in the government?
So Elon's moving pretty fast. He frankly, Charles, has found some things that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. And it's amazing in the amount of time. I've actually got pages of ridiculous items that the federal government has been appropriating money. I just copied it onto one page. You know, thus far, he thinks he's found over $1 billion in savings, which is that's a lot of money. And then when you see some of the things that we have been spending on, that's your money, $60 million to make mice transgender, $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, and I wrote that down. I don't even know what that means. $14 million. $59 million to pay for hotel rooms in New York City for the illegal migrants who were here, who were in New York City. The cancellation of 29 contracts at the Department of Education that were all related to DEI, $101 million. Contracts like helping students to understand and interrogate the complex histories involved in oppression, and to help students recognize areas of privilege and power on an individual and collective basis. $42 million for social and behavioral change in Uganda. I mean, all this stuff adds, this is a lot of money. And sometimes I have people say, well, that's only $42 million. You will never hear me talk like that, I promise you. I mean, you talk about the money that's been cut from the food bank. All this money is real money, and it can go to other places and other entities. So I'm very impressed with the work that he's done. Now, I will say, from an investigative standpoint, he's done really good work. He nor one person necessarily has the authority to cut appropriations. That's the work of Congress, and we control the purse strings. So we're in that process of.
I'm wondering, when will that come to you to do that?
Well, we're looking at it now. But to his credit, he's moved a lot faster than Congress normally moves. Next question. Steve.
Can you elaborate a little bit on my wife's most important issue? She's adamant about border security. You talked about it briefly, but could you tell us about the progress that's being made on stopping the inflow of illegal immigrants, but also deporting the criminals that got in before Trump took office?
Right. Well, look at the month of February, for example. The number of encounters at the southern border decreased to about 8,000. Last month, February of 25. February of 24, it was almost 190,000, and it's significant. So I look at it not only from an issue of right or wrong, and let me back way up, and I think I've talked to you about this before, Steve, and you would agree. We're a nation of immigrants,
Sure.
and we want people to come through the right way. There's a right way, there's a wrong way. We all came from somewhere. The issue is we want people to have it done the right way. And when we've seen these numbers decrease, obviously it's a change in attitude and a change in enforcement. It was exasperated under the Biden administration, the messages that Biden and Harris sent when he was, even before they were elected, when they were campaigning. When they saw it being a political issue, they tried to get a hold of it. And the fact is, we all see what we've seen. We've seen the images. Frankly, these numbers are a dramatic decrease. What I hope is, and I've talked to law enforcement in all of my 20 counties, they've been overrun with fentanyl. They're convinced that the vast majority of the fentanyl has come across through the southern border. And hopefully with those numbers decreasing, hopefully we're going to see a decrease in fentanyl, because fentanyl is deadly, the smallest amount, and you can't profile the victims. It's old, it's young, it's male, it's female, spans everything. So we think we're getting control of it. Part of the big, beautiful bill that I talked to you about will be additional resources for border enforcement. And one more thing while you've asked, we had it shouldn't have been a controversial vote, but we had a vote last week to keep the government open, a continuing resolution that'll run through the end of the year to continue to fund the government. I don't think it matters whether you've got a Democrat president, a Republican president. I think the government shutdowns are bad. And if the continuing resolution had failed either in the House or the Senate, we would be in a government shutdown. And if we're in a government shutdown, that means essential services provided by the government don't happen. They don't happen. And I've got employees. If you're in the government and you're in a shutdown, you've got to deem the employees essential or non-essential. If they're essential, the military, the border control agents, the air traffic controllers, those men and women are reporting to work, but they don't get paid. And I just have a problem with that. So I voted for the continuing resolution to fund the government, to keep it open through September 30 when we need to work on our 12 appropriation bills. And hopefully we can get our business done, but I'm glad the government stayed open. Thank you. Well, let me, if I can, say, first of all, I want to thank the Chamber and thank the Farm Bureau for inviting me, as you do annually, to meet and to talk. I realize that I'm your voice in Washington, and I don't take that for granted, and I don't take my vote for granted. The fact that I represent what I would think is the majority of your views. So with that, let me say to you all, may God bless you, and may God bless the United States.
And that concludes this week's 30 Minutes program. We hope you enjoyed today's show. And, of course, we invite you to tune in again next week at this same time as we bring you topics and information of importance to our community. From all of us here at Thunderbolt Broadcasting, until we meet again next week, I'm Charles Choate.
You've been listening to 30 Minutes, a community affairs program on Thunderbolt Radio. You can listen to this broadcast and others anytime by visiting thunderboltradio.com and following the Thunderbolt Radio and Digital YouTube page. Thanks for listening.